I grew up believing that endurance was the same thing as strength. My mother raised me alone, and she always carried herself like nothing could break her. Bills stacked up, relatives talked behind her back, work exhausted her, but she never cracked. She moved through life like a soldier who'd forgotten what peace felt like. And because of that, I learned early that emotions were luxuries, not something people like us could afford. By the time I reached my 20s, I'd mastered the same habit. I kept quiet, worked hard, solved problems alone. If something hurt me, I buried it. If someone disappointed me, I acted like it didn't matter. I didn't blame my mother. I just thought this was how life worked. But everything began to fall apart last winter. My job cut my hours. My relationship ended out of nowhere. And my mother and I barely spoke because every conversation turned into a small argument that neither of us intended. I kept telling myself I was fine, that things would work out, that struggling quietly was normal. But deep down, something was breaking, something I didn't want to acknowledge. One afternoon, after another fight with my mother about something stupid, I left the house and walked aimlessly for hours. It was cold, windy, and I didn't even realize I ended up near her friend Lucia's cafe. Lucia had known me since I was a kid. Strict, honest, the kind of woman who never sugarcoated anything. I only went inside because I had nowhere else to go. When she saw me, she didn't smile or ask the usual small talk. She just looked at me for a moment and said, "You look like you're carrying your mother's life instead of your own." I froze. No one had ever said something like that to me. She poured me tea without asking and sat across from me like she'd been waiting for this conversation for years. She told me that when my mother was young, she did the exact same thing I was doing, taking responsibility for everyone else, swallowing every emotion, pretending she didn't need support. Lucia said, "Your mother taught you how to survive, but she never learned how to show you that surviving is not the same as living." Then she told me something my mother never had the courage to admit. Before I was born, she'd burned herself out trying to hold her family together. She took care of everyone, parents, siblings, cousins, and when she finally needed help, nobody showed up. That was the day she decided she'd never depend on anyone ever again. And that decision became the blueprint of her entire life. And mine. Hearing that broke me in a way I didn't expect. It made me realize my mother hadn't raised me to be cold. She'd raised me the only way she knew how. But it also made me realize how much I'd lost by carrying her fears as my own. I wasn't living. I was repeating. Lucia leaned closer and said something I'll never forget. At some point, a child has to stop inheriting their parents' wounds. Otherwise, you'll spend your whole life healing a pain that was never yours. I went home that evening with a strange calmness. For the first time, I saw my mother not as someone who expected strength from me, but as someone terrified of what weakness had cost her. I didn't fix everything overnight. We didn't magically understand each other. But when she asked if I was hungry, I didn't pretend I wasn't. When she asked why I'd been quiet lately, I didn't lie. And when she apologized for our argument, I didn't say it's fine. I told her the truth. And in that moment, for the first time in years, we actually saw each other. Not as parent and child, but as two people trying not to drown in lives that had demanded too much from us. Let me know in the comments. Do you ever feel like you've been carrying burdens that weren't originally yours?